Okay, good day, everyone. This is Lou Federici. I'm here with Peter Barrett, the probate judge for the Madison-Guilford District, to have a discussion about the upcoming election and the role of the probate judge in our society. Peter, how are you doing?
Doing well, Lou. Thanks for doing this, by the way. I appreciate it.
Sure, glad to be here. Can you tell us why you are seeking re-election as the probate judge for our district?
Absolutely. Lou, this has been the most interesting and rewarding position I have ever held. It is an opportunity to serve the public, and that, frankly, is one of the reasons I became an attorney and now a judge. I've been encouraged by a lot of people who, both attorneys and people who have used the court to seek re-election, and it's something I really would like to do and hope to continue doing.
Okay. I'm sure our viewers would like a little bit of just a little background. I know many people already are familiar with you, but a little background would be helpful.
Sure. Married 38 years to my wife, Jean. She's here supervising me in the background. We are both from big families. We have 4 children, Kate, Maggie, Michael, and JP. We're an all Yukon family. Jean and I met at Yukon. All 4 of our children have gone there. We're very proud of them, and now we have 2 little grandchildren as well. Professionally, Jean works at a local bank. I do maintain a small law practice in addition to serving as probate judge, and in that practice I have always included a probate practice component. I've argued a couple of cases before the Connecticut Appellate Court on probate issues, and I've taken many assignments. Before becoming a judge, I took many assignments from local probate judges to represent people who needed some help in pending probate matters.
Okay. You touch on all the volunteers that are helping us here at the studio, Jean, and all the other volunteers. It's really great that people want to pitch in with all that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the probate court and your responsibility as a probate judge?
Sure. The probate court, if you recall, for many years there was a court in almost every town in the state. A couple of them worked together, but mostly every town had its own. It was not the most efficient way to run things, and effective 2011, January 2011, they consolidated the courts so that they went from 117 courts down to 54. And so when they did that, they grouped towns together in ways that made sense. And in our case, we have just a 2-town district, which I think works perfectly, Madison and Guilford. We have very similar demographics. We're both, obviously contingent to each other. And the court is located right in the old Memorial Town Hall, right on the Madison Green, so it's convenient to both towns. And for our purposes, it's a single district, a single community.
Okay, so there's an example of the state having a little regionalization that's helping everyone.
Right,
Sure.
That's true. And I should mention our hours. We're open 8 to 4. We have an excellent staff of clerks. We have 4 clerks, all are experienced, and we're all committed to helping the people that come to our court. So
the judge of probate is an elected position in this state, anyway.
It is, which is unique. Every other judicial position in the state, from the Supreme Court through the Superior Court and even the magistrates in family matters and small claim matters, are all appointed. But the one and only judge position that's elected in the state of Connecticut is the probate judge position, and so that is actually set forth in our state constitution, and it makes us very unique. Now, having said that, although we are selected by an election process, it is an entirely non-political position.
Okay.
And so if you think about what a judge does, it's hear the facts of any case, make sure the law is applied appropriately, and then use your common sense and judgment to get a fair result that hopefully helps as many people as possible. And so that's the way we do it. When I describe this to people, in the community as we have back and forth discussions about the probate system, sometimes they're surprised, but every single person agrees that's exactly the way a court should be run, non-politically, and that's how we run it.
Sure. And so with that in mind, and the fact that people do have a decision to make, where can, if people want to do a little bit of research about the upcoming election, where can people get that information?
The position of probate judge now has to be filled by an attorney. That's one of the other changes they made when they consolidated the courts. Last election, there were 4 attorneys interested. Now there's 2. So what I recommend to people is look for, obviously the candidates always will talk about themselves. I do as well. But there are certain, objective, verifiable ways that you can check out attorneys in any situation. And I'll give you a few examples. There's Martindale-Hubbell, which is the long-established peer rating system by attorneys, and I've been fortunate enough to achieve their highest rating, both in ethics and for proficiency in the field of law. There is the Judicial Department has a website. You can look up attorneys there. You can access what cases they've worked on and whether or not there's any disciplinary history. I do not have any disciplinary history. I've never been grieved, and in 37 years of practice, never been reprimanded. And there is also a probate court attorneys panel, which is managed by the probate court administrator's office. This is a panel of attorneys who are willing to take appointments from local judges for difficult cases for little or no pay. And obviously I don't do that anymore since I'm sitting as a judge, but that's something I participated in for many, many years. Had the privilege of representing many veterans, in fact, in probate processes as well.
Okay.
So those are 3 verifiable ways you could check if you wanted to online. And then, of course, I also encourage everyone to please ask around. Attorneys are very much selected by their reputations, and I think judges should be as well.
Okay. And I think people have some idea of what a probate judge does, but maybe not a complete picture. Can you tell us what the range of duties for a probate judge are?
Yeah, certainly. To me, there's like 2 tracks of what we do at the probate court. There are what most people already realize we do, which is estates and trusts. Somebody passes away, we make sure that their assets are transferred from their name to the people that they have selected to now own their property. And then there's this separate and very significant social services or protective services component where the court has supervision over cases that involve the elderly or adults with intellectual disability or minors. And these can be very complicated, sometimes difficult, and even troubling circumstances, and so we try to find a way to help each of those groups. For elderly people, it might be a conservatorship application, guardians with intellectual disability, some guardianship process, and for minors, we're really just looking for the best way to care for them, whether it's adoption, termination of parental rights for parents who aren't doing the job right, and maybe appointment of guardians.
Okay. And in either track, either the decedent's estates or the protective services track, people have an opportunity to be heard. They receive notice of the pending matter, right? And they can come and be heard before you.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these things, they're not just show up and help us. There are statutes which guide how these procedures should be held, and for good reason. You want to make sure that everybody has a right to be heard, that they have notice of any hearings, and that they're afforded due process. So a lot of times what we are doing before I even have a hearing is I'll appoint an attorney or a guardian ad litem so that these people are protected and their wishes are also represented at the hearing. And of course I listen very carefully to all of that.
Okay. And one final point on this general topic is you mentioned the decedent's estates. Someone could have a will, and that would come before you if someone passes. But if they don't have a will, there are statutes that govern that as well, and you hear those equally?
That's right. So what happens if somebody dies without a will, and that happens frequently, the statute sort of creates, it's called an intestate estate, the statute would create the lineage by which you would pass their property. So it kind of takes the place of a will, and not unexpectedly, some would go to the spouse and the children and so forth, by statute.
Okay. And can you tell us a little about the experiences that you've gained while you've had this position for the past 4 years?
In these 4 years, I've reviewed hundreds of cases. I've held hundreds of hearings. I've heard many, many hours of testimony. I've issued many decrees, and on all different types of processes. So, in that sense, every day I'm gaining more experience. And again, what I've really focused on is making sure everybody's heard, and that these hearings, when we have them, everybody, is courteous, and all the rules are followed, and then I apply the law and make the best possible decision I can.
Okay. So, in addition to this responsibility with regard to hearing cases and processing matters that come before you, are there other responsibilities that you have as a probate judge?
We do. We have, so we manage our own staff, and I'm fortunate I have a very good chief clerk who helps with that. We have 4 excellent clerks who have experience. And we also have, I have scheduling responsibility, make sure everything is scheduled in a timely fashion. We have our own internal procedures too, so that we, facilitate things to keep moving and to get decrees out in a timely fashion. I'll give you an example. One thing we do now is when a release or a certificate of devise has to be issued for real estate, we're very cautious about making sure we get the description exactly right, because if you don't, it can cause a title searcher a lot of nightmares, and people, as a result, a lot of nightmares down the road. So we've set up some procedures to make sure that title is always very clear when it comes out of our office.
Okay. And while people can't call and ask for legal advice from your staff is available. If people have questions, they can contact the office?
That's right. And they'll also, and you're right, we can't give legal advice, but we're more than willing to help with the procedural aspects of the case. So many times we're in court, and someone will come to the front counter, and one of the clerks will take them to the back room and sit with them and help them fill out their forms appropriately. And in this way, we're able to make sure that people are able to access the system, sometimes without the help of an attorney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in that case, it still runs through the normal process of notice to everyone interested, and just it's a function of just moving that matter along in an efficient fashion. That's
right. And I should also point out, one of the changes they've made in the court in recent years, which I really like, is what's called a streamlining process. Mm-hmm. So when something appears to be uncontested and all the paperwork seems to be in order, rather than have a hearing, what we do is we send everyone a notice saying, look, this is what has come into the court, here's a copy of it. If you don't have an issue, we'll admit this will, let's say. We'll admit this will on October 15th. But if you want a hearing, ask for it. And with that, we're able to move things along pretty quickly. Great.
I think people probably have some question about the expenses related to running the probate court. Can you give us a little insight into how that works and what the guidelines are?
Right. The probate court has what are called probate statutory fees. They are set by the legislature. I'm actually glad you asked this question. The probate courts, probate judges do not set the fees for probate matters. They are set by the state legislature, by statute, and in fact, the checks are made payable to the treasurer. We end up just collecting them and forwarding to the state. So what we do is we work with our probate court administrator, who's administrator for all the courts throughout the state, who interacts with the legislature and tries to budget things appropriately for the court. But now, court judges cannot, any more than a superior court judge, a probate court judge cannot change the fees. Those fees are the same in every court throughout the state.
Okay. And with regard to you mentioned there's a probate court administrator, are there other judges that you come into contact with and have, interaction?
Right, yeah. So there's 54 judges, obviously, the 54 courts. And yes, I have a lot of interaction with the other judges. I sit on two committees. One is the Procedures Review Committee, and one is the Planning Committee. The Procedures Review Committee, it sounds very dry, and you know what, it is. It's very dry. But the reason I selected that is because I do want to make this more of a people's court, the most we can, and try to help people use the court services without an attorney when they can. And so we develop these forms that are hopefully user-friendly, and we kind of update them and make them more so as we go, so that people can hopefully come to court, and instead of trying to figure out what to put in a letter, we can say, well, wait, we have a form for that. Provide this information and we can help you under the statute. That's that. And then the planning committee is more of kind of long-range planning for the courts as a whole. And so, for instance, there's a couple of nice issues coming up on the horizon, and one of them is about informal, unsupervised probate. So, which would make it even less necessary to get into court on things that are uncontested and maybe just a typical family will that no one's objecting to. We might be able to figure out a way to have you be able to do that, and then just file the results in court rather than coming to court for approval of each step of the way. So we're a long way from that, but it's something we're starting to look at. In fact, there's a seminar coming up on that I'll be attending.
Okay. So there's a constant process of balancing fairness and openness with efficiency and ease of access.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. When things are contested, especially, that's when we really need to make sure everybody's heard and everybody's treated fairly. That's an important part of any judge's job, is that, ultimately you're going to make a decision, and like any judgeship, I'll make the decision alone. But I want to make sure that when I do that, people know that they've been heard and had every opportunity to present their case and were treated fairly.
Sure. So have you had occasion to work with a new probate judge? Have you been, called upon to assist with incoming members to the probate judges?
Yeah, I have, and I'm glad you mentioned that. When I came in, or when any new judge comes in, you're assigned a mentor. In my case, it was Judge Forgione from Brantford, who I did a great job helping me out, and I still call him on occasion. But I was recently asked to act as a mentor for our newest judge in the state, and that's Janine Lewis in Saybrook. So I worked with her to transition her into the position, and she knows she can call on me, and I'm sure I'll help her along the way in the future as well.
That's great. You mentioned you're attending a seminar. Do you have continuing education requirements?
Yeah, we do. All attorneys do. Judges have a little bit of a higher level of requirement. We're required to have 15 hours per year. I have always exceeded that. I go to as many seminars as I can, and I feel like that's a way I can learn more and more about the system. There's also 40 hours that we do when first elected, so I started with that.
Judge school.
Judge school, yeah. Judge school. One of the next seminar coming up, actually, I'll be a presenter at, and that's it's called the Judges Institute. It's a seminar given by judges to judges, and I'll be presenting on conservator issues, and I'll be moderating a panel discussion on that.
Great. So what about general public outreach? Is that part of the job as a probate judge?
I do. I consider that part of the job. There's no mandated hours or anything for that. But yeah, and by the way, this is an open invitation. Anybody would like to hear from a probate judge and hear what we do or what services we provide, be glad to do that. But I've given many discussions or talks for the seniors, both in Madison and Guilford, some civic groups, school groups. I participated in mock trials, and I know you have as well. But I've served as a judge and a coach for some middle schoolers who are learning about the law, so I do what I can.
Yeah, it is incredibly encouraging and rewarding to see those. I've done it down to the middle school level, but I've also done it at the college level. It can be very impressive.
It really is. When you have a 12 or 13-year-old kid standing up and conducting a cross-examination, you're thinking, wow, it's impressive. It's very, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. All right, well, we appreciate that. And this brings us probably to a good place to wrap up our segment. Can you just finish off with telling us why you'd like to remain as the probate judge for Madison and Guilford?
Sure. This has been the most interesting, most challenging, and rewarding position that I've ever held. I've met a lot of wonderful people in this community. I'm often struck by the resilience of the people in this community because I'm meeting them at times when they're often going through hard times. And I don't know if it's just our Yankee hardiness that we have on the shoreline, but it's very impressive. I've also met many families who are quietly providing good lives for children who are vulnerable or adults who are disabled or elderly. And, we're fortunate because not every district has that kind of strong system, support system, and I see it a lot here in Madison and Guilford. Not every case. So there's some times when my responsibilities are a bit elevated because I have to get in there and try to help find someone who can help these people. But a lot of times my job is to help the helpers. So, I'll close just by saying this, that to me, being a probate judge is really an opportunity to do good in this world. And ultimately, that's something I think all of us want to do. I'm kind of in the last half of my career, shall we say, so it's been very rewarding to me to be able to help the community in this way. I consider it a privilege and an honor to serve in this position, and I'd very much like to continue. So I'm respectfully asking all of our viewers, all the members of this community, to provide your support, and I'm asking you for your vote on November 6th.
Well, that's great, Pete. I really appreciate your taking the time today, and I'd like to thank everyone for viewing this program today. And if anyone does have any questions, you can look on Facebook for Re-elect Barrett for Probate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks,
And
Pete.
thanks for all the help here.